Hello, my name is Noah Abji, and today we're going to learn how to round decimals. So first, what is rounding decimals and why do we round them? So basically, rounding decimals is when we take a decimal and make it shorter while keeping it as close as possible to the original value of the longer decimal that we started with. So an example of rounding decimals is listed below, where we start with the decimal 3.14159265, and maybe we shorten it to 3.1416. Or we could round it even more to 3.14, or round it to a whole number such as 3. So we're shortening the decimal while keeping it super close to the original value. As you can see, 3.14 is quite close to 3.14 with all these other digits at the end. So why do we round decimals? Well, remember, decimals signify numbers smaller than 1, and a lot of the time, it's really long to list them out, and they don't have a big value, so they're not even that useful to what we might want to do. Here's a hypothetical scenario. Someone named Isabel can run 400 meters in 59.5382 seconds. Now, if someone asked Isabel, how long does it take you to run 400 meters? It would take a long time to list out 59.5382 seconds. And remember, the 8 and the 2 at the end, those represent thousandths and 10,000ths of a second. And accuracy that she doesn't need to tell people because it's really, really small and nobody can tell that difference. So instead of saying 59.5382 seconds, she might just say 59.5 seconds. Or she might just say about a minute. And then she's rounded it, but it's a lot shorter of an answer. That's a lot easier to comprehend. So how exactly do we round decimals? So we're going to use this example, rounding 0.32915 to the nearest hundredth place as we go through the steps. So here are the steps. The first step is identify the place value that you want to round to. And in parentheses, I put underline it because it can help you just keep track of what you're doing. You don't have to underline it, but it's good to show your work. So in this case, we're rounding to the hundredth place because it's to the nearest hundredth. And remember, place values work as the following. This is the ones place, and then as we move past the decimal point, we get to the tenth place. So this is the ones, this is the tenth place, and then next is the 100th place, 1 over 100. So this represents 2 100ths. And then the thousandths place, the 10,000ths place, and the 100,000ths place, and so on. So the decimal place that we're rounding to is the hundredths place. So we're going to want to underline that, and that's where this 2 is. All right, so the second step is look at the number that's one space to the right and determine if it's 5 and above or 4 and below. And I'll add a comma here. Look at the number 1 space to the right. So the number 1 space to the right, if we draw a little arrow, is this 9. It's the one in the thousandths place. Now this is the number that we're going to use to determine whether we round up or whether we round down. So it's 5 or above. So we know we need to round up. So here's what we do if we round up. And I actually listed both steps here. So first, if it's 5 and above, which this number is, we're going to round up. So here's what you do. You add 1 to the place value you are rounding to and drop the rest of the digits. So we're rounding to the hundredths place. And in the hundredths place, we have the number 2. So we literally add 1 to 2. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So this 2 is going to turn into a 3. And then we drop the rest of the digits, which means all the digits that come after it. So this 9, this 1, and this 5, we don't need them anymore. So our decimal becomes 0.3, and then 2 plus 1 was 3. And we can all agree that 0.33 is quite close to 0.32915. So that's why this rounding works. Now, if I had, instead of 0.32915, if I had 0.32415, we would have to round down because it's 4 or below, which means that we round down. So 0.32415 rounded down, the rule for it is drop the rest of the digits. So after the hundredths place, so remember we keep the 2, drop the rest of the digits. So we can just cross these out, and then we get 0.32 as our answer to that. Now there is one special case that I want to go over, and that's what if we have a decimal like this? Now it doesn't seem like a special case at first. It seems like, a normal decimal that we're rounding. But let's go through the steps and see what happens if we try to round this. So 0.89951. So we're rounding to the thousandths place. So we're going to circle, or underline, the thousandth place, which is this 9 here. Now look at the number one space to the right and determine, is it 5 and above or 4 and below? One space to the right would be this 5 here. So it's 5 and above, which means that we're going to round up. 5 and above means we're rounding up. And so if it's 5 and above, add 1 to the place value you're rounding to and drop the rest of the digits. So we can drop these digits, and this 9, we need to add 1 to it. So 9 plus 1 is 10. And this is where we run into our issue. We added 9 plus 1 and got 10, but we can't write 0.8910 because that's lower than this. It doesn't make any sense. So here's what we do. When we add 1 to a 9, we turn it into a 0. So we're going to turn this into a 0 and add 1 to the next number. So we're going to add 1 to this 9 now. So 1 plus 9, 9 plus 1 is 10 again. So we're going to do the same thing. We turn this 9 into a 0 and we add 1 to the value to the left. So 1 plus 8, or 8 plus 1, equals 9. So this turns into 0.900. And the reason we put zeros here is because we take the second digit of the 10 and put it there. And the first digit of the 10 gets added to the number before. So it turns into 0.900, and these zeros at the end don't do anything, so it's 0.9. And if we look at this, we can all agree that 0.89951 is super close to 0.9. So that's what you do if you end up adding, and you end up with 10 when you add, so you can't replace the digit. All right, so now let's look at some review questions. So I have 3 review questions here. Round the following, and I have to the 10th, the hundredths, and the thousandths place. All right, so we'll give you a few seconds to pause the video, and then I'll explain the answer. So the correct answer to the question was 0.9, 43.15, and 22 for questions 1 through 3 respectively. So starting with 0.932, we're rounding to the nearest 10th place, so let's underline the 10th place. So that's this 9 here. So to determine whether we round up or down, we look at the digit to the right, which is this 3. So this 3 is on the lower side, it's below 4, which means that we're going to round down. So when we round down, all we do is simply drop all of the digits to the right, and we end up with 0.9 as our final answer. For the next one, 43.1481, we're rounding this to the nearest hundredths place. So the hundredths place is where this 4 is, so let's underline it. And we use this 8, the digit to the right, to determine, do we round up or do we round down? Now, since the 8 is 5 or above, it's on the upper side of the spectrum, we're going to round up. Remember, when we round up, we can drop the rest of the digits, but instead of keeping it the way it is, we add 1 to the digit that we're rounding to. So this 4, we add 1 to it and it becomes a 5. So instead of 43.14, we have 43.15, which is very close to 43.1481. So 43.15 is our next answer. And finally, 21.9997 to the nearest thousandths place. So if we write that out, 21.9997, and you can already tell it's extremely close to 22, well, that's going to end up being our final answer. Here's why. So we're rounding to the nearest thousandth, which is where this 9 is right here, because tenths, 100ths, 1,000ths. So we look at the digit to the right, which is this 7. Since it's above 5, we're going to round up. Now when we round up, we drop the rest of the digits and add 1. So 9 plus 1 is 10. Now remember, this is a special case. When we get a 10, we replace the 9 with a 0 and add the 1 over here instead to the digit to the left. 1 plus 9 is 10. So we're going to do the same thing, put a 0 here, and add 1 to the digit over here. 1 plus 9 is 10 again. So we're going to do the same thing and now add a 1 to the ones place. And 21 plus 1, or this 1 plus 1, is going to be 22. So 22 is it rounded to nearest thousandth. And technically, if you were to show what the thousandth place is, you would write a bunch of zeros, but we can simplify that. So we can just cross these out and cross these out because zeros don't do anything at the end of decimals, and it's just 22. That's all, and thank you for watching.